So, I want to tell you a story about a dating horror that happened to me recently while I was in New York. A few years ago, during the pandemic, I was pretty lonely and I decided to dabble in Twitter Spaces. Twitter Spaces is an online place where you can host chat rooms and people from all around the world can join and you can speak to them in real time and they can hear your voice. And I decided during this time when I was feeling a bit lonely that I wanted to host meditations in which people could join in and feel connected. So there was one day in which I was hosting a meditation while I was in South Africa and this guy joined. I looked on his profile, it was a guy from San Francisco, and I didn't think too much of it. He spoke to me during the meditation and said he really enjoyed it and that he wanted to stay in touch. After the call ended, I think I remember that he followed me on Instagram, but I didn't follow him back and I didn't have him in my mind at all, apart from the fact I remembered that he was a guy that lived in San Francisco. So, after this space, over a year went by and I found myself in the California area because I was going to Burning Man. Burning Man is a gathering, like a festival, but it's not commodified, where people come to celebrate, to express art, and has an element of freedom about it. So I was going to Burning Man for the very first time, and I had bought an electric bike. This bike was so cool. It was a pink and blue electric bike that was really tiny but went super fast. It went like 30 miles an hour and I loved it. And I used it throughout the whole of Burning Man. But when Burning Man came to an end, I was really sad to let go of this bike because I had nowhere to put it. And I didn't want to throw it away because I thought I would be returning to Burning Man the next year. And then I remembered that a few years ago, a guy had entered my Twitter Spaces and he was from San Francisco. So I rifled through my Instagram, trying to remember his name and trying to find him. Funnily enough, I still didn't follow him back. So I never saw his profile. I never saw anything other than his photo that was on his the photo that was his profile picture, but I couldn't see into his account because it was private. So I messaged him and I was like, hey, this is really random, but I have this bike. It's really cool. I'm leaving San Francisco tomorrow and I'm not able to take it back to Europe with me. So I remember you said you had a house in San Francisco. Do you want to look after this bike for a year? Play with it, ride it around, enjoy it until I come back next year. And he said yes. So the next morning, before I was going to the airport, I took a taxi and I dropped the bike at his house and I said thank you to him, and I really didn't think much of it again, and I didn't really think much of him again over the year. It wasn't until I was coming back again to Burning Man, but this time I was coming back a little bit earlier. I was coming back like 1 month before it was starting. And when I go to the States, I usually do a layover in New York because it's much easier to adjust to the time zones if you stop in New York first and then head to California. So I stopped in New York for a few nights and I did have in the back of my mind about the bike, but I wasn't going to reach out to this guy until I got there. And then randomly, on the first night when I was in New York, he hit me up and he was like, hey, let's go out for a drink. I see that you're in New York and I want to go out with you for a drink. It would be so cool to catch up. Bearing in mind, I've never really had a conversation with this person. I've never really seen pictures of him. I saw him briefly when I dropped off the bike, but it was a very fleeting encounter for about 20 seconds. So I didn't really remember how he's looking other than this profile picture that he was showing. And that night that he messaged me and wanted to go out for a drink, I was so jet lagged. I was like, there's no way I'm coming out. It's the first night I've got to New York. I can't make it out. I can see you tomorrow. And he was like, well, tomorrow I'm leaving to go to another place, so I'm not going to be in New York. So we didn't get to see each other. And I then did get curious about him, like, oh, I wonder who this guy is. I haven't, seen him or spent time with him, but he seems quite keen to get to know me, and he's watching my stories. Then I remembered that he's been on my Instagram, but I haven't been on his Instagram, but he's been watching my stories. So I get over to California and I call him up to pick up the bike a few weeks later. And in this time, we're making quite a lot of phone calls. He's ringing me and we're having some deep dives. And I find it really interesting because he seems to be connecting with me on a lot of topics that I'm interested about and in a lot of things that inspire me. And I was like, oh, this is a really interesting guy potentially. Like, we seem to have a lot in common. We're connecting really deeply. We're talking about all this stuff, and he seems to be like really similar to me or into the same things as me. So I was like, oh, he's maybe interesting to get to know him. So I picked up the bike from his house, but he doesn't live there anymore. He lives in New York, and went down to Burning Man. At Burning Man, I saw him briefly. He came over to my camp. And then after Burning Man, he started calling me again, and we were having really deep conversations. And he was like, I want to see you. I want you to come to New York, and I want to spend time with you. And then he was going on to say things like how he was thinking about a serious relationship and that he wants to create something for the future that is meaningful, and he wants me to go over there to be with him. And it was a little bit ambiguous and also a little bit strange because I really had not spent any time with him. Like, I'd had some phone calls with him and felt like I was getting to know him a bit, but I didn't really understand what his offer was about going to New York. He didn't say, come and stay with me. He didn't say, I'll put you up in my apartment. He had been showing me pictures of his apartment a lot of the time and showing me how great it is. And I think just trying to entice me by sharing pictures of these apartments because he was moving into a new place, but not really making an offer that would be attractive enough for me to decide to go over to New York. Because after Burning Man, I was exhausted and I felt like the last thing I wanted to do was go to a super busy city and to be there in such intensity for the last part of my tourist visa in America. So I thought about it and I was like, his offer is just too ambiguous. What if I go to New York and for a few days and it doesn't work out and I go all the way there with all my stuff and then I have to go back to where? Like, I want to spend the rest of my time in the States while I have it on my visa. So in the end, I listened to my intuition and I decided to go to California. So I told him that I was going to California and he was really disappointed. He seemed kind of mad in a way and he became like more distant. And I went to California and I had an amazing time, and I'm so glad that I decided to go to California and not go to New York in this moment. I'm so glad that I listened to my intuition. And then time was just running out on my visa. So it was getting more and more to the date in which he wanted me to go over there to spend time with him. And again, it was really ambiguous and it was so strange. Like, he was calling me up. We were having deep conversations for hours and hours. He was trying to paint all this picture of our life, of a future together, houses together, children together, everything. And really enticing me to go over to New York. And while I was in the process of deciding a day that I was going to New York to spend time over there, I got an opportunity to show my art at an art show in LA. So I was like, I'm actually going to have to cut the time short in New York. I'm only going to be able to come for a few days. So he didn't seem so happy about that. He really wanted me to go for longer. But I was like, look, this is an opportunity for my art. I wanted to show it, so that's all I can do, and my visa's running out. Unless you're going to marry me and I'm going to be able to stay in the States, then there isn't another option. So in the end, he agreed to a few days me coming. But when I was looking at the costs and I was looking at how much it would cost for me just to go and spend a few days with him in New York, which was no longer going to potentially be on my way back anymore, it was going to cost me at least $2,000 in the flights, in all the travel and transportation. I said to him, look, I can't afford right now to come and justify these costs of $2,000 to see you for 2 days. I can't. And he starts getting angry. And he's like, so you're saying you're only going to come to New York if I pay for it? And I was like, no, that's not what I said. I said, I can't afford to come to New York. I can't afford to justify spending $2,000 on a date with you when I don't even know how it's going to go, you know? So I'm like, I just don't have it in my budget. I can't. And at the very last minute, when it came to the very last day, he turned around and he said, okay, I'm going to pay for you to come to New York. So he did. He paid for my flights to go to New York, and I stayed with him in his apartment. This was a place that he was boasting for so long about, like showing it off. It's like a $10,000 apartment. I know already that he has a house that's worth at least $1 million or $2 million that's in San Francisco. It's not about the money, but it's like, okay, it's not about the money, but if I'm letting you know I don't have the financial means to go on this date and fly to New York, which isn't normal. Like, what woman spends $2,000 on a date to go to New York for a few days with a guy? Not many. Okay, unless they're super, super rich, they can just fly over and spend like a couple of grand. But even the principle of it, of me having to spend all this money to go with him, and he was like, well, if you spend this money on the flights, I'm offering you a place to stay. And I'm like, well, that's not coming out of your pocket. This is a place you live. This is a place that you would already spend on. This is your home. And also, I wouldn't have the costs of going to New York if I wasn't going there to see you. So it didn't make any sense at all. Didn't make any sense at all. And before I arrived there, I was talking to him as well, like, was it even a good idea to go to New York? Because what's the logistics after that? We don't live in the same country. I don't have a visa for America. How would I date you? And his idea and solution was that I should just fly to a neighboring country, such as Toronto or Mexico City. I do have connections in Mexico City, but that's not where I'm planning to be. And just to wait there for a few months until I can fly back to New York to spend more time with him, where I would then have to leave again and go back to this neighboring country. I was like, what am I? An accessory to your life? Like, at this point, I should have known that it was a huge red flag. He changes nothing in his life. He stays in his $10,000 a month apartment. I just go there when he feels like it, and then I leave again and just wait in a country for him and then go back when I can. No consideration of my life, building my life, my business, care for me, or whatever. Like, how am I going to build my career if I'm just there for him? Like, going to New York, one of the most expensive cities in the world, where I have no rights to live and work, and then going to another random country, Toronto, where I don't know anyone there apart from one person, and don't have any rights there either, and just going backwards and forwards to him seems so entitled and so unbalanced. It was just such a strange proposition. So anyway, I get to New York, He doesn't get me the Uber from the airport, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna bring it up, but he hasn't organized my car. And I get to the place. It's a nice place. And we have the first 24 hours together, which seem nice, which seem really sweet. We're getting to know each other. He seems welcoming. He carries my bags up the stairs. He takes us out to nice restaurants. We're talking. We go on a boating lake in the sunshine. It's very picturesque. It's very beautiful. And after this first night, I'm like, oh, this has gone quite well. We can see how this flows. And he was seeming to be like very respectful, saying we can stay in the other bedroom or you can stay in this bedroom. And I decided to stay like in the bed with him. But staying in the bed with him, to me, doesn't mean we're going to have sex, okay? At all. Like, I've just met you. Like, we've spoken on the phone, but we've only just met. So sleeping, as you were so courteous the other night, and like showing that, there's space, and like you don't have to have this pressure or whatever, then I would presume as well that by staying in the bed with you, you don't automatically think that we're going to have sex on the very first night. Like, I don't know when we're going to, but for me, it takes more time. Like, I personally want to be in a committed relationship with someone. But that doesn't mean to say that it may never have happened if we had had an amazing connection, which we didn't. But we got into bed, and then he starts having a tantrum, like a grown man in his 40s, literally having a tantrum. And I was like, hi, what is going on right now? And he's like, oh, well, we're not having sex. And I'm like, I've just got here. What do you mean we're not having sex? Of course we're not having sex. Like, we just got into bed like a few seconds ago. And he's like, yeah, but you've come all the way here. I was like, I've come all the way there. I was so furious. I was fuming. I was raging. I was like, I can't be with this man in this bed right now. So I got really annoyed, and I was like, I'm not going to talk about it tonight. I'm going to confront him in the morning. So we got up in the morning. Everything was calm. And I was like, look, I really want to talk to you about what happened last night. You put so much pressure on me to have sex, but we've only known each other for less than 24 hours at that point. What is going on? He's like, well, I just assumed as you've come all this way that you would have sex with me. And also, I need to have sex with you now to know if I'm ever going to want to see you again. I was like, what? You need to have sex with me at this very moment to know if you want to see me again. He's like, yeah, because I need to know the physical compatibility. I was like, what on earth? This is so backwards. You need to know the physical compatibility. It doesn't work like that. You form a connection with someone and then the intimacy comes if this is someone you're really serious with. So then I started to realize, okay, there's something that's really disingenuous about him. He is not being honest. And he just started to get more and more annoyed. And I started to feel really uncomfortable and super strange, like being in his house. So I started to dig a little bit deeper and ask him about, the times where he invited me to New York and how was he envisioning it, and, if I was coming to stay for longer than a few days and he was inviting me there, I would stay in his place or whatever. And he was telling me even then, the times that he was inviting me to New York, he was never actually even inviting me to stay with him. He was just inviting me to hang out with him in New York, and he would expect me to go and stay in a hotel for like a month or something, which would have cost me like $10,000, which is absolutely crazy. So I started to feel super strange by him, and that he felt entitled to my body because he'd offered to pay for these flights, and he had paid for them because he's letting me stay in his house. And I started to feel that he was very, very fake. And then, later on in that day, when we were sitting in the living room, We had planning to go to the spa in the evening. And I saw on his phone that he was on a dating app and that he was talking to other women in front of me on a dating app. For me, that was like the final straw because I was like, this is already not going well. And just because I haven't given you sex on the first night, you are now talking to other women on the dating app. So when we got to the swimming baths, he was trying it on with me and he was trying to be connected with me. And I was like, hey, so I've come all this way to New York to see you. What if you came all the way somewhere to meet me and I was on a dating app while I was with you? How would you feel? He's like, I would feel really awful, not knowing that I had seen him doing that. And I was like, oh yeah, well, why are you doing that to me? And he went red and he didn't know what to say. And then from that moment, he was just lost for words and was so embarrassed. And I left the baths. I just got out of there and I was like, I don't even want to be here anymore. I just want to go. And any chance, any possibility that I would have ever have slept with him during that trip, which I don't think I would have done, was just completely out the window. And I was not attracted to him at all from that point on. And we still had a few more days left together because after the spa, he said that he would extend my trip for a few more days until the very end of my visa, that he would pay for my flights to be changed so that I could stay a few more days to get to know him. So I agreed to it just in case there was like a mirage of hope, because we had spent so much time talking and I had spent so much time investing in him that I thought, I want to still give it a chance. Little did I know, and I should have known, the only reason why he made that offer was because he was hoping to get sex again. Like he was hoping that over the days that I would give in and sleep with him. And I didn't. I never touched him sexually in any way because he had really put me off him. And then in the last days that we were spending together, I realized that we had absolutely nothing in common. Nothing at all. That we were from completely different planets, completely different worlds. And this whole time that he had been talking to me on the phone, forging this connection with me, was all fake. It was all false. And then I realized, oh my God, I don't know anything about his life. I don't know anything about him because I haven't had access to his Instagram. I haven't been able to see him. And he's been leading the conversations. And it's because he's been stalking me for over 2 years on Instagram, watching all of my stories. I remember now, I used to see him often, like this guy. I was like, oh, he's watching my stories again. He had pretty much watched all of my stories every day for 2 years and twisted himself into someone that he thought that I would like when it wasn't anything of that he was. And it wasn't in a sweet and endearing way. It was actually more in a creepy way. And that's when I started to feel really unsafe around him. And on the last day, he just really let himself go. Like we were sitting in the living room and he came in a top that was filthy, like covered in dirt and stains. It looked like cum stains. And then he came back. I said, you know, I don't really want to hug you with that because it smells really bad, like it's dirty. And then he was like putting on a fuss, like, oh my God, what do you mean it's just a top? And I was like, yeah, but we don't really know each other yet. Like to like hug you in that filthy state is not nice. So we went to put another top on that was just as filthy and covered in sweat and like all sweat patches over it, and it stunk. And I was like, is this a message of disrespect, or is this like because you're angry? And he was just like, well, do you know what, I'm just not comfortable with the fact that I've paid for your flights. I was like, what on earth are you talking about? You offered to pay for these flights. You offered to pay for these flights. And I don't know his level of wealth. I don't know if he's super rich. I don't know if he's a millionaire or whatever. But I feel like he was also trying to falsely lead me to believe that he was wealthier than he is. because on one of the days he sat me down and he was like, let's go shopping for our future house. You can look for something up to 10 million. And this is a guy that is worried about paying for my flights. This is the guy that didn't book me an Uber to get to his place. This is a guy that was checking the cost on the apps of taxis to see where he could save $1. So I don't know if he's just like super frugal and is a very wealthy guy, or if he is a liar. But I just completely lost all trust in him and completely saw through his facade that he had been faking this the whole time, faking his personality to get close to me, and even potentially future faking what things would be with us if we had had this relationship. And I did ask him, why did your last relationship end? Because I was like, right, I've got this time with him. I need to do some digging. Like, I need to find out who this guy is, because it doesn't really feel like he is the one that he's saying he is. And he said that his last relationship was ending because she was with him for 3 years and they were living together, but he never stepped up to marry her. And she said, like, you're not stepping up to marry me. So instead of stepping up to marry her, instead he told me, well, yeah, when she said that, I just helped her move house. And it was so kind of me and so courteous of me that I put a lot of effort into helping her move. I was like, what the fuck? Like, literally, what the fuck? This woman has dedicated 3 years of her life to you. She's paid your mortgage by the sounds of it. And when she's asking you for some more commitment and stability, you throw her out. Or you help her to be thrown out. So it's absolutely nuts. So I don't know what's going on with this guy. I had a few theories, and one was that potentially he's not really into women. Maybe he's on the other side. Another one was that he's just scared of commitment and doesn't really want to commit to anyone. And another one was that maybe he's a psychopath. Like, I don't know. And it was just really scary, like how far he lulled me into his world and like tricked me into believing that he was someone that he wasn't, and kept tricking me into presenting me with these things like this house, this apartment, this, which was none of it he was really offering to be mine, but he was just like showing it to me to try to capture me into him in some way. So I left furious and saying to him that I never wanted to see him again. And it just made me think so much about women and about how being a woman and being single, especially if you get to your late 20s, your 30s, your 40s, or whatever, is almost a crime these days. Like, if you're a single woman, it's something that's supposed to be so terrible, and it's a lot of shame that women have for not being in a relationship. And the truth is that a lot of women who are in relationships are extremely unhappy. They can be in situations of abuse, domestic violence, not connecting with their partner, having children when they don't really want to have children. And it's like, okay, why can't we celebrate single women more? Why can't we celebrate the power that single women have to say no to the wrong man? Because that's what a lot of single women are doing these days. They're getting into circumstances like mine, and where a lot of women could be enticed and attracted by that and fall for this kind of behavior, are seeing straight through it and are not agreeing to it and not giving into it because society tells them they should be in a relationship. Like, on paper, if I had shown up with this man, like, he's got his own company, he owns a $2 million house, he rents a $10,000 apartment, he has a lot of money, he's taken me out, he's paying for my flights, he seems stable and secure. Presenting that to people, be like, yeah, you've hit the jackpot, you've met your future husband. But that's not the truth. And a lot of women are falling into this trap of just going for these men because it's this picture on the outside. A lot of people are seeing right now, coming up on coming up on YouTube as well, is this woman who was presenting this trad wife community. And it turns out this man had been SAing her children, which is absolutely insane. It's insane that she's promoting women to do that. And the man is a child abuser. Crazy. Because of this story, and because of a lot of things that I've been seeing recently, I have decided that for the next, I don't know how long, but I'm thinking about a year, that I'm just putting dating out of my life. I'm taking off all the pressures and the constraints that society gives me into feeling that I should be in a relationship, that I should be married, that I should have children by now. And I'm focusing on myself because, as you all know, I'm back in Paris and I really feel like I'm starting life over. But not from the very start, because I have all these skills that I've acquired through many years of learning and growth and development. And what I really want to do is put all these amazing skills to use to really build an incredible foundation for my life, to build a pathway that I see much more clearer now than I ever did, than falling into the trap of relying on a man. I don't believe that men don't have a place in women's life. I really do believe that men can be so valuable in a partnership, the divine masculine, divine feminine, coming together. But sometimes that we need to admit there's still more work that we need to do as women to be in alignment with that incredible partner. And there's still more work that men need to do to be in that space as well. That we can't just pick any man based on his financial circumstance. That's not going to be the solution to our problems. Because when we go down that route, he's holding all the strings. He's holding all the purse strings. And if he decides to cut them loose, we are left in devastation. And that's not a position that any woman wants to be in. I remember seeing an episode of an interview from the housewives of Orange County recently. And there was a woman on there, I don't remember her name, but she was talking about how she was in a really bad relationship, trying to get divorced, but she couldn't. And they were like, you can just leave him. You've got all the money from the show. You can support yourself. And she was like, what you don't realize is I can't. That I've been signing over my paychecks to him every single month. And that is how controlling and manipulative these men can be over women. So, instead of seeing a man as the answers to all my problems, the man that is going to set me financially free, that is going to save me, that is going to make me feel safe and secure, and be my ledge, I'm really going to focus on this next year to being my own ledge, to being my own safety and security, that when I rise up into this frequency, which I know that I'm not there yet, which a lot of women don't want to admit and don't want to accept, but I know that I'm not there yet and I'm on the way. When I rise up into this level, imagine the caliber of man that is going to meet me on that plane, when I can bring whatever I can bring to the table, and he can too. A man that can know that he doesn't have 100% authority over you is going to be a really different man that you attract. If you are in this vulnerable position, a lot of the times, the kind of man that you're going to attract is a predatory man. So, let's celebrate women who are in amazing relationships and loving the man in divine partnership and harmony. Let's celebrate incredible men that support their women in many different ways, not just financially, but are a great partner. And let's support single women who are deciding to show up for themselves when a lot of the times others haven't, to really build that foundation in their lives to get to a better place before they pursue the relationship, the man of their dreams, the fairy tale, which we can have. We can truly have, I do believe. But I don't believe that there are shortcuts. I don't believe that we're going to have it without doing this inner work. So I'm going to share with you my journey, and I'm so excited to show you where this is going. I'm in Paris, I've just got back, and I'm building myself to get set up, to get stable, to build a pathway to my businesses, my creations, and share this with you and tap into this dream life creation. That is what's valuable to me, is inspiring others to tap into their dream life and really have that, not a fake dream, not all the stuff that we see on Instagram, this posting of this fake relationships where there's really abuse going on behind the scenes, but really a dream, a true dream of happiness, the vibration of love, the frequency of pure potentiality. That is what I'm talking about when I talk about dream life creation, something that's so real. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching my video. If you like my video, give it a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to my channel to keep up to date. And also, please leave a comment. I loved all your comments last time. I really love getting comments from you and interacting with you, and I will always respond and answer them. And I will see you in my next video. Lots of love.